Okay, so, like, imagine this, right? You're about to be a U.S. Senator, brand new, the whole deal. But back in your home state, people are more curious about whether you actually show up for work than your political stances.
Yeah, not exactly the first impression you want to make when you're heading into, national politics.
Exactly. And that's what we're looking at today. This Politico article about Jim Justice, West Virginia's governor, soon to be senator. It's a wild ride.
It's certainly a unique situation.
So, Jim Justice, he's known for a couple of things, being a bit MIA from the Capitol building and this English bulldog, Babydog.
Right, I've seen pictures.
And we're diving deep into all of this today because it really makes you wonder, is this just a super hands-off way of governing? Is he carefully managing his image? Or is there something else going on entirely?
It's an interesting case study for sure. The article doesn't really give us the answer, which is what makes this deep dive so interesting.
Right. And that's what I love about these articles, more questions than answers. So the article kind of jumps right into it. They quote all these people who've worked with Justice, even some from his own party. And the thing is, they all agree he's like a ghost at the Capitol. One guy even says it's weird.
Which, coming from a politician,
That's saying something.
exactly. It's definitely not the norm in the political world, and it really makes you think. Like,
Mhm.
is this intentional? Is there some kind of strategy behind it?
Right. And then on top of all that, you've got this whole baby dog situation. He takes this dog everywhere, it seems like. Campaign events, official things. I even saw a picture of them at the Republican National Convention. What's that all about?
I mean, I guess you could see it as strategic,
Right,
right?
like some genius image management.
Yeah, maybe. The article has this one quote that I think is really insightful. Someone calls Babydog, get this, an associative tool to his humanity,
Wow.
right? So it's not just about having a cute dog around, it's deeper than that.
It's like he's trying to show a different side of himself.
Exactly. Because if you're not around much, maybe having this adorable, cuddly dog by your side helps soften your image a bit, make you seem more relatable.
So maybe it is strategic.
It's possible. The article does bring up some other possible reasons for his absences too, though. It's not all, sunshine and puppy dogs. It gets a little more complicated.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, the article mentions some health issues Justice has dealt with, and then there's his business empire, which apparently may or may not be doing so hot. And if that's not enough, he also coaches a high school basketball team.
Wait, seriously? High school basketball?
Apparently.
Yeah.
It's all in the article. So, I mean, it makes you wonder how much time and energy can one person have? And more importantly, when you've got all these things going on, where do your priorities lie?
It's a good question, and it's something that I think a lot of people listening, especially in West Virginia, are going to have strong opinions about. Because on one hand, you could say, hey, he's a hands-off leader, he trusts his team, he delegates well. But on the other hand,
On the other hand, it's like, are you prioritizing your personal interests over the people who elected you? Where do you draw the line?
it's a tough one. And this is where the article gets really interesting because it points out that even Justice's biggest supporters, the people who really like him, they struggle to defend his lack of visibility.
Yeah,
It's like they want to say he's great, but like the guy's basically a ghost.
right. It's almost comical. But there's this one quote in the article from a supporter, and they say, he wasn't always around. He wasn't always the most transparent. But when it comes down to it, we knew what he wanted.
Oh, wow. So they're acknowledging it, the absence, the lack of transparency, but they're spinning it like it's a good thing.
It's like a backhanded compliment almost. Right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he's not around much, but hey, at least we think we know what he wants.
But can you really get away with that long term? Especially in the Senate. It's a whole other ball game.
Exactly. It's not just about, like, showing up for meetings. It's about constantly communicating, being accessible, building those relationships. And that quote, it kind of makes it sound like even his supporters are picking up on this pattern of opaqueness.
Which doesn't exactly build trust.
Definitely not.
Speaking of trust, or maybe the lack thereof, this next part is what really got me. So some journalists, they're trying to track Justice's schedule, right? Figure out how he's spending his time. Seems like a fair question.
Right.
And get this, his office claims he doesn't even have a schedule that's solely for official business. Like, what does that even mean?
It's a head scratcher for sure. I
Right.
mean, how do you even begin to explain that?
Right. What does he do all day?
Well, and from a transparency standpoint,
Yeah.
it's a big red flag. Because if no one knows how he's spending his time, Who's holding him accountable?
Totally. It's like he's operating in a black box. And maybe that works in West Virginia, I don't know, but Washington, it's a whole different world.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, the article even mentions this back in 2019. The Associated Press, they managed to get a hold of his schedules for like 7 months. And guess what? He was mostly a no-show at the Capitol. Barely even met with his own cabinet.
See, there's a pattern here. But okay, so he's been governor, he's done things his way. But how does that, where's Waldo style translate to, like, actually being a U.S. senator?
Right, because being a senator, it's all about building those relationships, working on legislation, being there for those crucial votes. It's a whole different level of, like, being present and engaged, which doesn't really sound like Justice's style, does it?
Not really. And I mean, can you imagine him on Capitol Hill trying to, like, wrangle votes with Babydog trotting along beside him?
I mean, it'd be great for photo ops, I'll give him that.
Right. But it kind of speaks to this bigger question. Can this whole unconventional approach actually work on a national stage? So is this going to fly in Washington? That's the big question. Can you really be this hands-off, this, I don't know, mysterious when you're in the Senate?
Well, it's definitely going to be interesting to watch. I mean, there's no denying it's an unconventional style, right? But I'm sure his supporters would say, look, the guy gets things done. He connects with people, even if it's in his own way.
Right, like maybe this whole hands-off thing is actually him showing how much he trusts the people he works with.
Exactly. And don't forget, he was elected twice as governor, and now he's going to be senator. So clearly, something about his style is working.
Yeah, true. It's not like he's been unsuccessful. But I keep coming back to this transparency thing, the whole no schedule for official business situation. I mean, come on, that doesn't exactly scream accountability. Now, Washington, they thrive on that stuff.
You're right. It's a different world. But then again, his supporters could say, look at the results. He's delivering for West Virginia.
Yeah, and maybe those Babydog appearances are enough to keep people happy.
It's possible. But there's no denying the level of scrutiny in the Senate is, well, it's intense. Everything you do, every vote, it's all under a microscope. And when you're already seen as being a little bit evasive, a little bit, mysterious,
It's not a good look.
not really. People might start to wonder what you're hiding.
And on a practical level, imagine trying to actually schedule a meeting with the guy. Let me check my non-existent official schedule. Nope, nothing booked.
Right. It just doesn't seem very sustainable. Because being in the Senate, it's all about relationships. It's about being present, being engaged in those conversations. It's a completely different game. So can he adapt? Can he keep doing things his way and still be effective? I don't know.
That's a good question. I mean, it really makes you think about what it means to be a leader, right? Is there like a right way to do it, or is it more about finding what works for you, even if it's a little unorthodox?
Yeah, and it's a question that people have been debating forever. But I think this whole deep dive highlights something really important. No matter what your leadership style is, you've got to have transparency. You got to communicate, be accountable, because without that, you lose trust. And trust is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, you need that, no matter how cute your dog is. So there you have it, folks. Jim Justice, the Where's Waldo governor, is headed to Washington. Will his unconventional style work in the Senate? Will he have to switch things up? Only time will tell.
It'll be fascinating to see how it plays out.
That's for sure. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll be back next week with another intriguing story and hopefully some answers, but let's be honest, probably more questions.